All right, guys, we'll get started. So, what we'll chat about really today is, the things that you need to know before you get into the business and some insight from me as I have been running this myself as well. So, let's get that going. Again, the biggest thing is, when people are thinking about starting a daycare business, there's a lot of misconceptions out there because, again, there's very, I would say, limited information available online on these portals, and it's overwhelming. When I remember I started this, about our first location was in 2017, home based, and it took me a while to figure all this out. And ever since I started posting videos about, how to run a daycare business and the things that you should be aware of before you dive in or commit yourself to this, I started getting really good response. And thanks to all of you guys have helped me, educate more people and encourage me to do more of this so it can help more people create independent businesses. So that's what we will talk about. That's why I'm doing this. Most of you are ECE teachers. You're already doing, what you need to know to do in your own daycare as well. And genuinely, if you love kids, there's no other business like this. It's obviously overwhelming at times, but if you have the right structure in place and right people working with you, this can become a really long-term wealth cycle for yourself, your families, and you can scale this and go into commercial and all of that. So we'll speak about that as well. So today's topic is how to start, and not only just start, but also how to scale your own daycare business in 90 to 120 days. The 90 to 120 days timeline is basically for your application submission and approval. Okay. It can take longer based on where you are, what's the timelines, how much work needs to go into the location that you're working on. So the commercial usually takes a bit longer than residential because there's more red tape, and we'll talk about that as well. The biggest thing is just city timelines, and you have to work with architects, you have to work with contractors when you're dressing up a daycare space for commercial use. But regardless of that, you can have an application approved in 3 to 4 months, sometimes even less, if you know what you're doing and if you do everything right the first time. Delays happen when you have to revise multiple times, you have to go back and forth. That's what really causes the delays, nothing else, right? So number one thing, that's that. Now, who is this for? This is for ECE teachers, working hourly professionals have the ECE license but are not doing anything with it. And I know some of you guys have a license, but you're not working as a ECE. You got the license to open a daycare, but then, life happens and it's again like quite overwhelming to do this. So you never did anything about it, but hopefully today we can change that. And anyone that's really just maybe even getting into the business, currently enrolled in getting their ECE license as well to pursue this in the future. So that's who this is for. Now, the reality is a lot of ECE teachers are working on 22 to maybe like $30 an hour with wage enhancement and all those things. And the sad part is for home-based daycare, smaller operations, if you're working in one of those, there's really no benefits, no pension, none of that, right? It's a owner operator business and you're working there in a capacity to help them out. So it's not like a corporate structure. Unless you're working at a bigger daycare franchise, then you will benefit from getting benefits and all that. But it's still not compared to what you can do when you own your own business. Okay. So, and there's a lot of burnout, there's a lot of restrictions, is what we've seen. And I talk to a lot of teachers every day. Trust me, like at least 3 to 4 conversations daily for the last 3, 4 months. And a lot of teachers are just burnt out. They are not heard enough if they have recommendations for the daycares they work in. Owners want to do things their way. So, all that can change when you own your own daycare. And on a minimum from a home based daycare, these are just very broad numbers. Of course, these will be different for exactly where you are. So for home-based daycares, you can walk away with revenue. We'll talk about the net numbers as well, what comes to your pocket, but total revenue around $8 to $10,000 per month, which is like maybe like double or triple the amount that you get paid working at somebody else's daycare. So that's that. You can control your schedule, you can control your curriculum, and genuinely build generational wealth. Now, what this is for, I do get a lot of this question as well. Should we go get a franchise if we have the funds to do that? First of all, it's expensive. A lot of people, including myself, when we were starting, we honestly did not have the funds to even entertain the idea of a franchise. And I genuinely believe that a franchise is just like a roadmap that you're paying for. You still have to do everything yourself. You still have to pay the contractors, pay for the lease, all of that. But what you're doing in a franchise environment is you're paying 50 to $100,000 up front, and then every month you're sharing 6 to 8% of your gross revenue forever. That's what really sucks, to be honest. So let's just say your daycare is making 10 grand, and then there's expenses, teacher salaries, maintenance, operations. But when you're in a franchise environment, you're actually paying 6 to 8% of the revenue, not your net profit. So if you're making 10K, you're paying close to like $1,000 per month just for having their system in place. And you can create these systems. That's what we will go over today. Not only that, there's additional charges like marketing costs, things like that. And what you really get, you get a what's called a standard operating procedure. You get a SOP, you get the operational blueprint, which is great. But if you're already a teacher, you have the experience, you already know what to do. So you don't really need to pay a 50, 100K fee to just get started and then still pay everything else that comes along with it. And you have to really follow their guidelines. It's very strict when you're in a franchise environment. You have to use their brand colors. You have to use exactly what they provide you. You have to comply with their materials, their curriculum. So there's not a lot of control. Again, it's like you're buying a job and you're stepping back into a job, even though it's your own business, right? So that's what I personally think about franchises. Unless you're going at a much bigger scale and you're doing 100 plus, 200 plus kids daycare, then maybe it makes sense to partner up with a franchise. But when you're starting out, if it's your first commercial daycare or first home-based daycare, you don't really need to spend the 50 to 100K to get into the daycare world. Okay, so just wanted to clear this out. And yeah, there is a better way. That's what we will talk about today, where you can keep 100% of your profits and build wealth and obviously use that, leverage that to build future daycares. So today what we'll cover is a five-step system that helps you launch your daycare and how to get licensed in 90 days, not 12 months, not 18 months, and how to fill your wait list before you open. And we'll also towards the end, so stick around. We'll chat about the revenue of home-based daycares and commercial daycares. This will show you what you get to walk away with after all expenses paid. Okay, so number one, license and setup, the most important thing. So before we get into this, I want to share a couple things with you. A lot of people say it takes long, paperwork is impossible, you need a lawyer. Most applications get rejected, it's expensive to start. That's not the truth. What I want you to understand is you can genuinely get your license approved or your application to get licensed approved within 90 to 120 days if you do everything right, the first submission. It's just a checklist. I'm going to show you the checklist right now. It's literally you follow these things step by step, provide the paperwork, give the plans, the layout, and everything. And for home based, especially, you can get started in under 10K, including your furniture, including your equipment, including your marketing, your website, all of that. So we'll go over the checklist quickly, and then we'll continue with this over here. So here's the checklist. This is, and I've shared this tool with some of you guys as well. This is an online portal that I've built for staying on track on what you need to do. So we'll actually come back to this, but I'll show you the backend checklist first. So there's about total of what 47 documents, about 150 page application goes in for daycare approvals. So the number one thing is application for license. So what this and this is just my backend system. So don't worry about where it says client consultant, just ignore that. All right, so this is the checklist. Basically, what you see here is about 47 documents that we have to submit to licensing to give us an approval. And I make one thing clear that licensing and application submission is two different things. A license only is given once you do the walkthroughs with licensing officers, with your local health authority, do city inspections. But what I'm talking about today is how to prepare the application in the first place before you get to those steps. So we'll talk about that journey and that timeline as well. But this is technically, if you know what you're doing, if you have all these documents ready, you can actually even submit an application in less than 30 days. But I'm just being conservative. That's why I'm saying it takes 90 to 120 days. There's a couple of things that need some revision, some back and forth with architects. So that's what adds to the timeline. But if you have all the materials, all the context of the application ready to go, again, it's literally just a checklist, right? And you just fulfill the checklist and provide all the documents and you submit that. That's your business application for the license approval. Okay. So every health authority, so for example, in BC, I'm in Lower Mainland, Surrey up to Surrey to Chilliwack, there's Fraser Health. In Vancouver, there's Vancouver Coastal Health. So, but again, the context is the same. You submit an application. What typically goes with the application is site plan. Site plan is the overview picture of where the property is or the commercial. Even if it's residential, you have to submit a site plan to showcase the play area, to showcase the parking. Those are the things that go into the site plan. And then floor plan is again, if you're doing a home-based daycare, you don't need an architect to make these floor plans. You can design the layout yourself. And I'll go over what the layout design looks like as well. But if you're doing a commercial daycare, you must have an architect. And especially if you're buying something, let's just say you're trying to get into a commercial lease, before you make a commitment to get into a commercial lease, it's very, I would say, critical to review the plans of that property with an architect before you remove subjects or give a deposit. I've had people that I'm helping even now that work with the inexperienced people before, to say the least, and they lock them into leases, and they've been paying for months and years in some cases just to find out that a daycare is not doable here. For one reason, they never consulted the architect to begin with. They removed the subjects, they just checked the zoning, and they're like, oh yeah, wow, we can do a daycare here. But when they went to the architect, the story was different. So very, very critical if you're going into a commercial space. 100%, have your subjects long enough so you can have enough time to do this kind of due diligence. And then again, lease agreement, outdoor play area. There's a couple areas where outdoor play area can be, flexible. For example, in Burnaby, out here in BC, if you're next to, school grounds or, something like a strata property, there's a play area. You can get away with not having play area on the property. But typically throughout BC, Ontario, Alberta, this is even Saskatoon, this is a requirement that you must comply. Roughly around 75 to 80 square feet per kid is what you need for outdoor play area. So that's something that you should also account for when you're looking for a lease. And then again, a couple other documents like Public Health Act requirements. So you have to give some referrals about you being in good standing with, the ministry for your ECE certification. And again, some daycares provide transportation, so safety plan for that. We personally don't do that. We don't do meal preps, and we don't do transportation. Parents pick up and drop off. We provide snacks. So it's just, for me personally, I think it's an easier way to set up just because of kids having so many allergies and other requests and demands. So we keep it simple. But again, if you're passionate about, cooking and you want to do that, you can typically charge extra $200-300 on top of your fees if you provide meals and transport. So that's something that you can work on when you're working on your own business plan for your daycare, how you want to operate it. And also, do the due diligence about, let's just say you're buying something in a neighborhood, see what other daycares are doing there, right? Because again, it's end of the day, you're still running a business. You have to be competitive. You have to have some leverage over other daycares that will make you stand out. For us, we heavily focus on, crafts, and we have English and French curriculums in all our locations. So that helps us, stand out. And also, we do a lot of activities, indoor, outdoor, field trips, things like that. So all that becomes your business plan essentially, right? Another thing is, all these like small little things is what takes time, which is what will take you 90 to 120 days. Now, some important documents that licensees look at when you submit your business application is your behavior guidance policy, nutrition policy, repayment agreement, safe release of child. If parents are not coming to pick them up, who's on the file that can come pick them up? So paperwork to reflect all that, emergency plan. If there's a fire or there's any like other natural disaster, like what's your plan to get the kids out of the daycare? These are basically all the documents that go into creating the application that you submit. Okay. So this is what takes the 90 to 120 days. And there's a couple other things. Let's just say if you're in a corporate environment where you are running the daycare as a corporation, they'll ask you for like an organization reporting structure, which is basically like you are the manager, these are the teachers, this is the IT person, this is the special needs person. So it's basically like a overview of your staffing, right? So these are the documents that go into applying for a daycare license. And then there's another thing, your work history counts, your references count, criminal record checks. So there's a lot of confusion about this for home-based daycares. Typically for home-based daycares, you need to do a criminal record check, not just for yourself, but also for all the occupants of the house. So that's something that needs to be done. And for, of course, commercial as well, mostly when you have staffing and teachers, you have to do criminal record check on all of them. Now, we'll talk more about independently home-based and commercial daycares. So you guys get an idea of what needs to go into the application. Literally all these documents, you collect them one by one and basically put them all together, and that becomes the part of or that is basically your licensing application to submit to the licensee. Okay, so that's that. We'll come back to what we were looking at before and continue working on this as we go. The next thing I'm going to cover now is basically, the revenue charts and what you can expect when you open commercial daycares compared to residential daycares. So again, everybody's with me. You guys can all see my screen now, right? Yes.
Yes,
Just
we
drop it into the
can.
chat. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
The checklist is gone, correct? You guys can see the regular presentation now?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Perfect. So we went over the checklist to show you guys what needs to go into the business application when you submit. And then the next step is when you're actually going to submit the things that you need to understand to see if any given property that you're proposing a daycare in could be a home based, could be commercial, is even feasible in the first place. We'll talk about that. Application package, we have already gone over it. And then we'll talk about the models now. So, home based or commercial, where should you start, right? And it's complicated, but this will help you understand it better. So, home based daycares, startup cost is around like under $10,000, I would say. Sometimes even less if your home is newer. There's not like a lot of renovations that you need to do. But typically, talking about renovations, that's the number one question I get asked. Like, what are the renovations that go into home-based daycares? The number one thing is the safety for kids, right? So let's just say you have a split level home, a regular detached home anywhere in Canada. You have three bedrooms upstairs, two bedrooms downstairs. The two bedrooms downstairs is what you're planning to convert into a daycare space. The layout has to make sense in a way that you can have enough dedicated space for three different aspects of your daycare operation. That's the play area, indoor play area, classroom area, and the nap room area. So these are the three things that you need in even commercial daycares. How the licensing approves the daycares is based on the square footage of playroom and classroom. Okay, so this is important to understand when you're doing your feasibility for any given space. Let's just say, for example, your basement suite is 1,000 square feet all in, including the two bedrooms, the washroom, the hallway, the staircase, everything, right? You're not going to get approved based on 1,000 square feet. You're going to get approved based on the measurements of the classroom and the playroom. So that's minus the washrooms, minus the kitchen, minus the nap room. Nap room square footage is not counted towards the allocation of approval for how many kids can be hosted in a daycare space. Now, for home based, you can maximum do 8 kids in BC, 6 kids in Ontario. So, again, it's a little bit different for different provinces. But just to give you an idea, that's basically how it works. Unless you opt in for rezoning of a property into a commercial rezoning for CD, which is Comprehensive Development Zone, or CCR, which is Childcare Specific Zoning. So, if your property qualifies for these credentials that they have for rezoning, then you can even host up to 24 kids in a home-based daycare. Then technically you're converting a home-based daycare into a commercial setup. Then the architect comes into play and all those things come into play again. Okay. So keep that in mind. But coming back to numbers, under 10K, you can get started in a home-based daycare. The steps go like this. Number one, you want to do your feasibility before you even go buy an application package, or if you're like, I'm actually in touch with some people that are looking to buy homes that are ECE teachers where they can start running daycares, right? So what we are looking for is enough square footage that will allow us to create a layout that will potentially get approved, right? So again, what you need is 40 square feet per kid in BC, again, 50 maybe in Ontario, and it's off by like 5 to 10% variance throughout. Somewhere it's less, somewhere it's more, but just to give you a general idea, that's what you're looking at for your square footage. So if you have pure space of play area and classroom space within your basement suite, accounting to, I would say, 7 to 800 square feet, then it'll be no problem, right? So keep in mind, no washrooms get counted towards the allocation of dedicated space towards daycares. And again, there's also ratios that you have to respect within a facility. For example, if you're doing a home-based daycare, 8 kids only, you need one washroom per 10 kids in BC. But if you're doing, let's just say, a 30 kids daycare in a commercial center, you need three washrooms. So one washroom per 10 kids. And we'll talk more about commercial as well when it comes to the types of categories that you can have the classroom for. So that's your basically just two of them, infant toddlers and 30 months to school age. For infant toddlers, there's a requirement in commercial daycares that you must have an accessible washroom within the classroom. So it has to have direct access. If you don't have that, you'll have to make a safety plan that showcases that, there is enough room for the infants and the teacher to take them to the washroom. Why they want the washroom in the same classroom is because, again, when you're dealing with kids under 30 months, and let's just say you're towards the end of your shift, the ratios are over here 1 to 4, and you're the only one left, and you have 4 kids with you. Somebody has to go pee, or you have to go change the diaper. What happens with the other three infants, right? So for that supervision, for that aspect of safety, that's why they prefer that. And it's actually one of the checklist items that licensing officers go over, even in your architect plans. Which is why, now coming back to the first step, architect plans are so critical, because if you do that right, everything else is just following the plans that you've built in the first place. So hire an architect, spend the 4 or 5 grand on, paying them and find somebody that does only daycares. There's a lot of architects, and I've worked with a lot of them. They don't know what they're doing when it comes to daycares. So there's specific architects that have experience in the daycare industry. They know what the city is looking for. They know what the licensing is going to look for. Most of your work can be, timeline wise, cut down if the architect knows what they're doing. Okay. So numbers again for a home-based daycare, $5,000 to $10,000 to get started, 6 to 8 kids based on where you are. Monthly revenue right here in BC and throughout Ontario, Saskatchewan, even here, even if we do $1,000 per month flat rate, you're looking at about 8 grand per month, just raw revenue coming from the fee you collect from parents. And yes, there's again grants available where parents are subsidized. There's three different grants that you can avail as a licensee or as an operator. One is wage enhancement. That's basically $6 an hour for teachers, which gets paid to the operator, and then the operator can decide if they want to structure the payroll for their teachers with wage enhancement, without wage enhancement. That's up to you. It's a benefit that's given to you. Second thing is CCOF, that's childcare operating funding. Childcare operating funding is basically paid based on the number of kids. So for infant toddlers, it's roughly around $96 to $100 per kid, and for 3 to 5, it's $56 per kid. So that's another $500. $6 an hour for 160 hours a month is about $1,000. So that's additional $1,500 to $2,000 that you're getting paid every month in subsidies and grants from the government directly. So averaging it about $10,000 per month for a home-based daycare. And the monthly profit shows 4 to 8 K. Why? Because even if you are the one working there, you're running a business now, right? You got to come out of being working at a daycare as a teacher, as an employee, and now you're the employer and the employee when you're starting your first home-based daycare. So you have to pay yourself as well when you're doing. And this is again a completely different Zoom class for how to structure your finances in the back end for setting up daycares. But just to give you a context, like let's just say you're making 10 grand in your business, and if you were to hire a teacher, if you're not working there yourself, you will still pay them the hourly rate or the salary that is roughly around $4,000 to $5,000 based on their experience. So after paying that, you're still left with $4,000 to $5,000 per month in your pocket, right? So that's for home based. For commercial daycares, for entry level commercial daycares, startup cost just to get a lease is around $30,000 to $80,000. This is basically your security deposit for the lease, or you're negotiating something with the landlords. If you get commencement is basically a free period that you can negotiate again, and it depends on how much demand there is for that particular site. So this is just to get started for commercial daycare. Obviously, there's ongoing expenses as well, and we'll cover that, which is not on this slide here. But capacity, we'll talk about, let's just say 20 kids, 25 kids in a daycare space. Out here in BC and even in Ontario, prices are very similar for leases, roughly around $45 to $50 a square foot. So if you were to set up a lease for, let's just say 25 to 30 kids, you will need minimum 3,000 to 3,500 square feet of pure indoor play area space that can be accounted for this approval. So that at $50 a square foot, you're looking at roughly 8 to 10 grand per month. So startup costs, take about, I would say 8 to 12 months, just as a buffer, because even when you get the license application approved, you still have to go through construction, you still have to go through, and again, it depends on what's built out, what needs to be built, how much work needs to go in, but account for that at least for 2 3 months on top of your licensed timeline. So, and again, one thing to remember as well, even when you do get licensed, you're not going to get the 25 30 kids knocking your door overnight. It's going to take 1 2 3 4 months to have that enrollment filled in. So always account for that. But talking about the revenue, at 25 kids, you're making around $45,000 a month. And after paying the teachers, you will need, so out here again, and it's very similar throughout, you need one teacher per 8 kids for 30 months to school age, and you need one teacher per 4 kids for infant toddlers. So now for a commercial setup, it depends on what classrooms you're proposing for approval. So if you have one classroom of infant toddlers with 8 kids, another classroom of 30 months to school age with 22 kids, then you basically do your ratios and payroll according to that. But to just give you an idea, you're running at like a 30 to 35% margin. So monthly revenue for a 25 30 kids daycare is at 45, expenses are around 25, so you're still walking away with 15 to $20,000 per month. Okay, so it gives you an idea of what kind of investment is involved. And overall investment, let's just say you're looking at a shell unit, there's nothing built out, you have to put the walls up, you have to do everything. The square footage for 3,000 square feet, you're looking at about $50 a square foot for construction cost. That will run you up to around 150K. The good thing though is it's not that you're paying this 150K plus like 6 to 8 months of lease payments upfront. It's pay as you go. So you pay monthly, and especially if you are able to negotiate 2, 3 months for free, you don't pay anything when you get started. And hopefully you can have the application submitted and approved in the 90 to 120-day period. So when the construction starts, construction's fairly quick. It's not that you're building anything from scratch. You're literally just designing the inside of a daycare that can typically be done in like a month, maybe 2 months if you have the right team in place, right? So account for all those things when you're looking into commercial daycares. Now, so far we talked about what needs to be done for the application process. What's the difference between home-based daycare and commercial daycare? In the ideal case scenario, let's just say you're able to submit your application and under 90 days, you have gotten everything in writing from the city, from your licensing officers, that everything is good to go, and you're actually now getting started to do your inspections and again then showcase the daycare to potential parents. That's what we'll talk about next. A lot of people miss this. A lot of people are excited about just getting licensed. They don't think about, okay, now we're licensed, what happens next, right? So ideally, and this is the mistake I made personally 8 years ago when we first opened our own daycare, we waited for everything to be done and then start marketing it. What happened? It just added 2 more months of timeline before we could start getting enrollments, right? So you're licensed now, your daycare is open, but nobody knows about it, right? So what's the point of that? So ideally, you want to start marketing for enrollments right after your application is approved, which can be done in 30 to 90 days, right? At that time, at that point, you have enough proof of concept. You know that the city is giving you permission to do this. You have architect plans. Fraser Health or Greater Vancouver or any ministry that you're in has communicated with you in writing that yeah, this is acceptable. We're good to go to the next steps. You can start processing your construction or whatever it may be, commercial or home based. You got to start marketing for enrollments right at that time because it's going to still take another month or two before you get the license. And that's the time you can leverage to actually start talking to parents, start talking to neighbors, start talking to other small businesses in your community where you're opening so they know that there's a daycare coming. This is what's going to help you, get the enrollments. And also, you will see that these are just the four channels that everybody can easily access and use to market their daycares. It's very easy to make Facebook ads within 5 to 10 kilometer radius of your daycare operations. And especially now with all the AI tools and everything out there, you can literally automate this. You don't have to even pay anybody to do this. Watch a couple of YouTube videos on how to run Facebook ads and you can set this up. Okay, so definitely make Facebook ads. Second thing is you've got to have a Google My Business page. So, if anybody searches in a community where you're opening daycare near me, you should be the first one ranking there. And it's based on geo tags. So, again, maybe a little bit complicated for somebody that has never done any marketing for their own business again, but you're going to have to start learning this to run your business. Otherwise, you're going to have a business, but it's not going to run. And then you're going to come back to me and say, Raj, we opened the daycare, but there's no enrollments. Now what do we do? Right? So this is something that you can start learning as you're in the process because you're going to need to do all this. Then, excuse me, make partnerships with there's a lot of groups on Facebook, like mom groups and maternity stores, some people that are already actively talking to parents of these young kids, start communicating with them. And then again, word of mouth, your neighbors should know that you're opening a daycare, and that's how you can bring in enrollments and phone calls before you even open. Start building a list, basically, right? When we opened our commercial daycare, I posted like a little board outside the daycare right after we got the lease, daycare coming soon. Even though it took us about 6 months from that day to get our approvals and start construction even, but I had that board sitting there for over 6 months with a barcode that people could scan to learn about our company, our daycare, and that gave us around 58 to 60 submissions, averaging about 5 6 a month. And that's not a lot, but when you add it up, it adds up. And then when we were about to open, we had 60 parents waiting for us to, and we had a capacity of 32 kids there. Out of those 60 parents, we actually signed up 15. So we were able to start our daycare where we were breaking even from day one, right? And if I didn't do that, which I learned from my previous mistake, then we would have to wait another 2 3 months to start doing that. right? So if you've secured a location, your application is in process, your architect plans are approved, start marketing it. Start telling people that this is something that's coming soon, or distributing some flyers, or anything you have to do to build some awareness about something coming to the neighborhood, right? So that's one thing that a lot of people miss out on, especially new operators. And when we were new, we also made the same mistake. Now, what we typically do again, and this can be different for everybody, the waitlist deposit strategy. Again, when you're a teacher, you're not dealing with most of this. You're just going there and taking care of the kids. But when you're a business operator, this is probably what your daycare owner is also doing. They are collecting a refund, non-refundable or refundable, depends on you. Our deposit is typically non-refundable. Collect $200 to $500 of waitlist deposit. What it does is creates urgency in parents' minds too. And trust me, we get calls from moms that are 6 months pregnant. They're planning so much ahead of time that, hey, in 1 year we're gonna need a daycare spot, right? Because they're looking up daycares, looking at reviews and all that, right? So to bring them into our ecosystem, we take a deposit. Because again, if there's no commitment, there's no work that's going to be performed. It's not the time where we can rely on just word of mouth that, hey, yeah, I'll send my kids to you, and when the time comes, oh yeah, we did admission at a different daycare, and you held two spots for them, right? Then you literally just lost two spots you could have given to somebody else. So always have a strategy in place to take deposits. What this does, also another thing, let's just say over the course of 6 months, the time it takes you to get licensed, you collect waitlist spots for 20 kids. That's about 6 grand that you've collected up front before you even started working in an active daycare. And again, if things change, if timelines change, if daycare is not open when you're hoping it to be open, have those things in your legal documents that you'll refund it or whatever it may be. Don't run away with anyone's money, but this will allow you to have predictability in your business, basically. And this is how you charge premium rates. A lot of people ask me this question that, oh, hey, and I'll take a step back. For our daycare locations, we are charging $200 to $300 above market rates. And that's because our curriculum actually supports that. We are doing things that other daycares are not doing. Most daycares are positioning themselves as, yeah, you leave your kids here and you pick them up, they'll have fun, they'll play, they'll this and that. But we're not doing that. We're actually treating our daycare as a learning center, not just as a daycare location. So that's what's going to help you take premium and also attract people that value the service you're providing. Okay, so highlight your credentials, your curriculum, do something different. I'll give an example of my client. They're on the island in Victoria. It's the wife that runs the operation. They have three daycares, 60 to 80 kids each location, and they're charging close to $1,800 per kid for 3 to 5, and $2,200 to $2,300 per kid for infant toddlers. They're making money. And the reason why they are doing this, and there's other daycares in the same neighborhoods that are charging 14, 1500 and 11, 1200 for same age groups. So they're almost double the price, but they're also on a wait list. Why? Because they have something that no other daycare does in Victoria. They're on in Victoria. They teach IT and robotics. The husband, it's a family business for them. The husband actually is from the IT background. That's what's special about their daycare. And so parents that are actually look, and every parent is looking to go above and beyond for their kids. I'm a parent, I have two kids. Obviously I want to make sure that my kids are getting the best of everything that I possibly can provide them, and I'm pretty sure other parents think similar as well. They want to get the best they can. Money becomes irrelevant when it comes to your kids. People are looking to invest in their kids so they can when they're about to go school, they're ahead of the curve, or they don't feel anyone doesn't feel left behind, and they feel more confident, right? So this positioning is what's going to help you get enrollments faster and also get paid more for the services that you're providing. The difference between the successful daycares and the daycares that are not successful is their curriculum, is what they're teaching inside the daycare, what they're doing inside the daycares. And obviously their communication systems, right? We have this app that we have created for our house use, where parents get pictures every hour of what their kids are doing. They can communicate with our teachers, right, one on one. So all these things add to the premium label of you being in this space where you're providing the same service as everybody else, but it's better just because of all the bells and whistles that come along with them enrolling their kids with you. Okay, so that's that. Now, operations and scaling. So what we'll talk about here is, again, some revenue numbers I've done again for local, market value here. So let's just say you're somebody that starts a home-based daycare. You're, again, after everything paid, even if you're the teacher yourself, And even if you have to hire somebody part-time, you're still walking away with about $6,000 to $7,000 per month. You do this for about a year, 2 years. And one thing that's, again, something that I don't say it's financial advice or anything, but something that we personally did. We started even our home-based daycare as a corporation. So we could get small business loans, things like that after running it for 2 years, filing taxes for the future locations. That's how we built multiple locations, right? We don't use, obviously, like we use our own cash when needed, but we use banks' money to get the funding for the next location and then the next location, right? It's very similar to when you buy a house, you build equity and then use the equity to buy something else, right? Same principle comes to businesses as well. So if you're somebody looking to start with a home-based daycare, a lot of people don't care about this because they don't think 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead of the time. $400, $500 to register a company, maybe like another 1,500, 2 grand annually to do taxes for a separate company. But you're setting up a structure that can be scaled. So you run this daycare for 2 years, $6,000 to $7,000 profit per month. That's pretty strong numbers for the bank to give you a small business loan now to go set up a commercial daycare, right? So definitely something that you can set up in the beginning and do it right so that you don't have to do it again. And the reason why it's important, because let's just say you start a home-based daycare under your personal name, and then you're like, oh, okay, I do want to, get a business loan, but all that tax paperwork is under your personal name. Most likely you're not going to get anything approved, maybe like 50 to 60K. But if you're looking for more capital, like 2, 300K in small business loans from BDC and other couple other channels, there's a government program as well for operating funding for daycares. You need these credentials in place to showcase that you have a profitable business, which will become like the baseline for what they can offer you. So you can then invest that in the next location or future locations. Okay. Staffing ratios, we've already gone over it, so nothing really to go over again. Timeline, if you were to take 12 months out to be fully operating and running, that's what you should be aiming for. 90 days to 120 days. For home-based, you can get started for a home-based daycare in less than 4 months if you do everything right. Right. And then fifth, sixth month, you can basically build a wait list by month seventh. And that's when you can, if you are somebody starting with a home-based daycare, once you have a wait list, you have, income coming in, you have profit coming in, you can then apply for maybe a commercial property or start even like after 1 year of running your daycare business, you can start applying for loans to get money for then expansion, right? And then you can typically, literally, if you start a home-based daycare, in the 12 months period, you can expect to start, a commercial daycare. Next steps. That's really it. That's really all I had to share with you guys today. Hopefully it helped you in some way, form, or shape. Thanks for joining, everybody. Take care and good luck with whatever you decide to do with this information. Hopefully, you learned more today than you knew before. And again, any questions, you guys can always book a call with me here.